All right, everybody, welcome to episode number 48 of The Raw Men. This time we're talking to Mythicist Milwaukee, people that are promoting a conference that are upcoming called Myth Information, and they're also hosting the Buzzed Belief Debates. Please welcome Sean Fracek, Rob Moore, and Joseph K. Richards, director of the Batman and Jesus movie, and I know they're going to be talking about that too. Boys, take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having us on, man, and thanks for taking the time to do this. We appreciate it.
No, my pleasure.
Joseph just came from a soccer match, apparently.
Yep. We lost. No.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. We're promoting a number of things. You named about 3 of them. We've got our irons in about 1 million fires, or about 1 million fires, irons in one fire. And the Myth Information Conference on October 21st is going to be a great a mix of 2 of them. The Buzzed Belief Debate Series, which was envisioned as a series of casual debates in a pub-style atmosphere where different theological subjects will be discussed among believers and non-believers as a way to kind of open dialogue.
When did you guys come up with this idea? The Buzzed Belief Debate?
Well, we always toyed with debates in general, and what can we do besides a conference, besides having a speaker, and besides doing a podcast? Let's do a debate. How do we get that done?
Right.
Coincidentally, our great friend Mario Quadracci, who stepped in to help us with other concerns too, idea in mind, and he kind of fleshed it out into this pub style atmosphere where, kind of a skeptics in the pub having a friendly, slightly tipsy debate, right?
Right.
And so he really was the man. He was the man with the idea to get it done.
Yeah. Then the biggest thing in Milwaukee is, we held 2 conferences last year, mainly geared toward atheists, secularists, humanists, things of that nature. But Milwaukee is such a divided and mostly religious city. So the idea behind the debate series is to bring something that both atheists and religious people can take part in, and hopefully get this conversation going. Keep the topic of religion on the table so we can continue to talk about these topics, and at the same time keep it professional and entertaining. And that was the idea behind the debate series.
What was it though? We're like the 4th most 13th most religious city in the country. It's absolutely ridiculous. We're near Canada, for Christ's sake.
Right.
And you can't find an atheist besides the 6 of us in this room. So
Is Canada known for atheism?
I just mean as opposed to there's like Birmingham, Oklahoma City, every place in Texas, and a bunch of places in Milwaukee.
Right.
It's like, what the hell?
To the north,
We're 90 miles from the seat of Freedom from Religion Foundation, and we're in a classically liberal state.
We want to keep doing. We want to keep bringing the secular initiatives, the various projects that we're doing to Milwaukee, and create them out of Milwaukee. In order to do that, we have to continue to keep the people in the city interested.
We know there's atheists here.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We know that there's atheists here. They're mostly scared to come out.
Right.
Like they are in a lot of places.
Right.
So really, this is helping us shine a light on our community and kind of kick the door open on the liberal churches in the area who might have people who are interested in the subject matter.
No,
And
I'm really
Go ahead,
interested. I'm really interested in the debate thing that you're talking about. I mean, like Matt and JT, that friends of mine, of course, have been doing debates like every week for the longest time, and it just so happens you brought up this format where you go to a bar to do this. Of all things, day after tomorrow, I will have my very first formal debate with a live audience. Did you guys know that?
Nice.
No,
I think of you as a debater too.
Yeah, well, I've done some debates on the radio, but I've never had it in front of a live audience, and so I'm really looking forward to this. And you're gonna love this. This is put together by a Christian group called the Bible and Beer Consortium.
Yep.
Okay, we've heard of them.
Yeah, I'd rather call it the Beer and Bible Consortium because priorities. But
and alphabetical even.
Yeah, but it's great that it's funny that people have been for a long time. I've had all these punks, say debate me, and if you're just promoting yourself, I would say, okay, sure. What venue, what town? You're going to cover my hotel? And I'm like, no. I mean, get on Skype and let me yell at you. And no, that's not. We're not doing that. And
Right.
At one point, I had somebody nominate somebody else because I made a rule. I said, I'm not going to debate anybody that nominates themselves. If you want to debate me, then contact me and say, hey, will you debate this person? We'll set up the venue. We'll cover these charges, whatever. Yeah, I'll do that. But I'm not going to have any debate with anybody that nominates himself. And so at one point somebody nominated somebody else, and I said, okay, well then that meets the criteria. I will do it, and it doesn't matter who it is. I'll do it. You set it up. I'll do it, and it doesn't matter. You give me the topic. The topic is important, but the opponent is not. And so they nominated somebody, and then told him about it afterwards.
Nice.
And he was not happy.
With who?
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this one. This is it was a group that, like I said, this group contacted me and asked me, would I debate this topic? Yes, I'll debate that topic. And would you debate this guy? And I'm like, I really don't care who the person is. You know, it really doesn't matter. They gave me a question that it wouldn't matter, honestly, who the hell it was. It could be the Pope. It could be Jesus. It doesn't matter. They're going to lose given this topic. The question is just unbelievable. The question is God the source of all that is good?
All right.
Perfect. Well, the Bible will tell you right there.
A nice beginner's one for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Get your feet wet.
If you can do that one in your sleep, Aaron.
If it goes well, you can join the buzz. We're looking for.
Well, Aaron has been definitely on the list, and
he know that?
yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had contact with him in the past. We just got to work something out. But
and watch his debate.
Well,
if he ends up sucking.
have you seen anything on YouTube in front of the
what?
the last one at the Art Park?
Dude,
it was fantastic.
It's amazing. No, I can listen to the guy talk. It's stunning the way he displays creationist.
Oh, he's
Well, you know,
high on your
I've
list.
never had a formal moderated debate, so hey, you know, I don't even know if I'm going to be any good at it.
No, it'd be fantastic.
That's how I feel, though. I love to argue, but debating and being a debater with debate rules is a different thing, and people go to classes to get trained at it. I mean, that's not.
There are some things to consider. I mean, especially, and one of the things that I'm expecting people to ask me to debate on is the topic of creationism. The problem there is that I've actually seen. I was watching Kent Hovind, for example, and I actually watched him lie more times in one sentence than there were words in that sentence. And so, how do you refute? You know, when somebody talks for 30 minutes, they give you a 30-minute presentation. You're supposed to rebut that, right? Do you have any idea how many lies they can pack into 30 minutes? And then if you miss any of them from this Gish Gallop, well, then you've lost, right? And the only way to address any of these things is to first educate the audience, which requires that you first have to strip away what they think they know, which is often a lot worse than not knowing anything, is thinking you know shit that isn't real. So that can be a very dangerous position. I've been told that scientists need never debate creationists, and I agree. Scientists should not debate any creationists. However, the first time I had a moderated debate over creationism, I had to tell the people that were funding us, I'm not a scientist. I'm a retired tattoo artist. I got no reputation to ruin. Oh, well, okay then.
Yeah, and then you start debating, and then you realize that that's not entirely accurate. Yeah, they get their ass handed to them. Yeah, well, that's with this debate coming up in October. Obviously, being Mythicist Milwaukee, we're huge proponents of the Mythicist position, and one of the things that we've heard constantly is that people want to see Dr. Robert Price debate Dr. Bart Ehrman over whether or not Jesus existed. And
now that is one that I want to see.
Yeah,
I mean, you name your two opponents, and I realize that they're both kind of on the same. I mean, they're on the same side of the fence with regard to the existence of God and all of that.
Correct.
But still, as a mythicist myself, I mean, I really want to see that match. That would be outstanding. That is the best debate that I can think of, really, off the top of my head, because you have to have some degree of respect for both of the opponents in the picture, right? Right.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, the best you can do is hope for a bloodbath.
Yeah, it's the one that the Myth Geeks have been waiting for. It really is.
Yeah, but I don't really just want to see a smackdown. I actually want to understand the reality of the situation.
Yeah, and that's how we're setting this up, as more of a conversation. It's not going to be a go for the jugular type debate. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of audience time for audience interaction at the end.
Now,
a lot of time for discussion.
These are going to be two people that the audience is going to respect, both of them. And so that's going to be a hard call. That's going to be a very good debate. And I wish I could be there. I'm scheduled to be somewhere else, and I can't be a part of that. And I'm sorry. I wish that I could be. I'm actually even mulling over in my mind whether it's possible for me to fly from San Francisco.
We're going to pump it up so big. By the time it comes around, you're going to find a way to do it. You're not going to want to miss it. Are you aware that that Matt is on as moderator?
Matt Dillahunty.
Matt Dillahunty's
oh, my word.
Added bonus.
This is going to be a great one. Go ahead. Tell me more. Tell me more. I'm just going to sit here and
I got a T-shirt on. I put it on just so I could get in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Buzz Belief debate series, and it's October 21st at Turner Hall in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Tickets are available still at a discount, Sean?
Well, not right now. Tickets are full price.
Tickets are full price.
There are discount codes out there.
But get them at mythicistmilwaukee.com.
You gotta definitely, if you contact us, we'll give you a discount code.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Track 'em down.
But yeah, and to your earlier point, Aaron, what we want to do with this debate series, we want to have a professional showing. So actually, the hall that we're utilizing is actually one of the top 3 in Milwaukee. So really, kind of getting that out there, putting it into people's faces, at least in Milwaukee, and then also online tickets are available. So you can pay $10 and you can watch the entire conference, including the debate, the day of. We are going to be live broadcasting. Because the debate itself won't be available for quite some time afterwards as a strategy on our end.
Mm-hmm.
But for those that do want to see this and they can't make it to Milwaukee, definitely buy your online tickets today.
And that's is, in case there's any confusion, it's a whole day of events.
Yep.
The Myth Information Conference includes the debate. The debate could easily be an event that stood on its own, but we've got speakers coming too. One of which is myself, making my debut public speech. I'm very grateful to the team for that opportunity, and looking forward to being what it sounds like. I'm like that first fight on like a 10 fight card. I'm the dude who no one knows. Who's going to speak before Dan Barker? Dan's coming out from Madison to throw down on the Ivories. Tickle the Ivories.
Well, it's kind of a conference at first though, because Allie Jackson, CEO of the Atheist Republic, that'll be her first
Allie Jackson
lecture.
And Thomas Smith.
And Thomas Smith from
joining us too,
Atheistically Speaking podcast and Thomas in the Bible podcast. That'll be his first lecture as well.
Is that his first one too?
Yeah, absolutely.
So really a great afternoon of entertainment. A little song and dance from Barker, as well as some speaking, and then the debate to top it off. So really.
And
what are the tickets cost, Sean?
Tickets cost, they are $60 a piece. The VIP are $160. That the VIP gets you full.
This is not just for the. This is not just for the debate. The $60 is for the conference and everything.
For the entire day. For the 12-hour day.
Yeah.
You realize most other people are paying. Like I've seen a number of different groups that charge upwards of $400.
Wow.
For a conference ticket. And I'm not suggesting anybody should. I mean, because I can't afford those.
Right.
But it's not a bad price, and it sounds like a good deal.
It's a really good deal.
Really good deal. And the VIP gets you access to all the speakers afterwards. And we will have people from the because this is such an exciting topic for a lot of people. We'll have people such as Richard Carrier in the audience. David Fitzgerald said he's going to be coming. I was hoping Aaron could be there.
Yeah, and I'm considering it. I'm just trying to work out the logistics of it, because I'm on a book tour myself at that time.
Yep.
And I'll be in Berkeley on the 19th. And then, as I said, I've got to hit. I haven't scheduled these yet, but I mean, there's a possibility of Bakersfield, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Amarillo, and those all have to follow. And then I have to be in Detroit by the 28th. So I have to somehow now, unless I fly out y'all, and then I can't. I'm gonna have to fly back and forth a couple of different times, and just to go back and get my car.
Well, let us
but
know.
I want to be part of this, because I mean, just the idea of you're going to have Robert Price and Bart Ehrman arguing over, and I've heard some of Bart Ehrman's arguments, and to know that David Fitzgerald and Richard Carrier are both going to be in the audience with Robert Price on stage, man, I want to be there.
And Matt Dillahunty moderating.
Yeah,
irritating me.
So yeah, we're excited about that. And there is one more special event that's going to happen at this conference. We are going to be releasing a new trailer for the Batman and Jesus film that we're working on, that we've partnered with Josef here.
I can't wait to see that either, because I understand I'm in it.
Yes.
Yeah, you are. You are actually.
I've actually seen your bit. I've seen the what do you call it in the film business? I've seen your dailies.
Well,
and,
yeah.
It was impressive. Just you talking about the Santa Claus story is what I saw, and it fits right in. It's just so natural. I thought it was the trailer that we were going to show at Reason Rally. It was just I happened to be seeing our raw footage.
Yeah, I had a little bit edited. There's a section on Santa Claus. You may remember we discussed briefly, and yeah, I kind of lead into that with part of your interview. But there's other stuff throughout too that goes into the, less personal stuff. But
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about this film. We, like Rob said, we did debut it at Reason Rally. We have people such as Paul Provenza, Caleb Priest from the Wu-Tang Clan, Richard Carrier, Fitzgerald Price, Dr. Robert Price, and more people.
You know, I was just at
well-
the Noah's Ark Park a couple weeks ago,
oh yeah, I saw your pictures of it.
and somebody
Did
there
you learn some good science there?
Somebody there told me how Jesus, you know, the existence of Jesus was proven by these 39 non-canonical gospels, whatever the 39 or the non-canonical historical references. What the hell is this guy talking about?
Was he talking about the non-commodity scriptures?
If he was, that would have been a really interesting
I don't think he thought
conversation.
about it that deeply, Sean.
Yeah, I think he's just saying words
Where does
and
he get
numbers.
39 from?
The Baskin Robbins.
Yeah, but that was a big one for me, because I've heard people say that because they have these non-biblical sources, and I say, yeah, but if you're talking about Josephus, let's go over it. You know, if you're talking about Tacitus, let's talk about that too. Let's see if you've got anything that's valid that isn't already understood to be an interpolation or a forgery, or where, like I said, in this case of Josephus, where he's actually talking about three different people that people could easily confuse, because he was talking about three different Jesuses, none of whom are the actual Jesus anybody believes in.
This is why the movie's so important. Maybe Kyle can speak to that.
Yeah, that's kind of the case when you look at comic books. You know, there'll be a different author. He'll be the same character, enough to call him the same name, but there's lots of differences from.
Yeah, and I understand exactly what you mean, because if it isn't Simon Bisley's version of Lobo, it's not worth reading.
Right. So there's people that you know, take that stance with the Gospels, and of course most people have agreed on the four, but obviously there's lots of other ones, and they vary greatly, and even the four vary greatly. And you know, it's interesting to look at that comparison with things that we know are written as fiction today follow similar patterns, but things that we know are written as fact today don't look that way. They don't have all these different stories that involve so much mythology either. It almost is obvious, I guess, but I guess you got to point some of this stuff out and make really obvious comparisons that somehow elude us.
There was a movie that came out 20 years ago, which they're now releasing the sequel to it. You remember Independence Day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when Independence Day originally came out, a lot of people didn't notice this in the audience because they didn't have like a cinematic history of noticing patterns and such. But I mean, Independence Day was like a compilation of scenes from a whole bunch of different previous pictures. So it's kind of like what you're talking about, where Independence was just like, much like the Gospels, where they take this story from this mythology and this story from this mythology, and they're
Right.
mixing different religions together to come up with a composite story. And then what they did with Independence Day, you can watch Independence Day now, and if you have, like I said, if you have a large repertoire of movies that you're immediately familiar with, you're going to say, I saw this first in that movie, and I saw that scene first in this other movie, and this they did this in these three other films before this one.
Right.
So there's nothing original here. Everything seems to be taken from something else, and they're just kind of glued together.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that is, when you like boil it down, that's almost the basis of everything you ever think or say, is just pushing together previous things you've learned and experiences that were fed to you in some way by your environment, but you're really never coming up with anything original. You're just maybe combining non-original thoughts into a new combination, but it's born of things that already existed, or you can't just pull it out of nowhere.
So what if you got these kids that see the movie Avatar, for example, and they've never
Okay.
seen Dances with Wolves or Fern Gully?
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's a half a dozen different movies that use this same kind of a theme, right? I mean, this is in no sense original, except for the fact that it's in 3D.
Right.
And it's computer generated graphics this time around, but it's kind of the same story that's been revisited, and you get that with Jesus, you get that with Moses. In fact, Jesus is a sequel of Moses, but
Right.
you guys know about that. It's just the way that we tell stories. There's certain themes that get carried over, and so Jesus ends up being a revisit or a sequel of Dionysus. For example, the reason that I became a mythicist myself was, I remember when I was hanging out with a high priest of a pagan cult, a Wicca cult, once upon a time. where he said his patron deity was Dionysus. And he went into the story about how Dionysus caused the springs of the earth to well up wine, right? So he's not talking about the Penn and Teller trick where you pour water into the vase and then you tip the vase and it pours wine out, and we're talking about the springs of the earth are bubbling up. That's a good trick. And you got to remember that Dionysus came before, unambiguously, many hundreds of years before Jesus. So I thought, okay, now why would God create his son to be a sequel to a human idea that was already popular in that area? So either Dionysus really could turn water into wine also, or Jesus couldn't either.
Right. And that's what we're saying with the mythicist position. We like to start breaking down the earlier mythologies and showcase how they really have inspired what we know as the modern religions or the Abrahamic faiths. And, we're really excited with this movie because, when you're talking to atheists and secularists, they will take that information. They can be interested in that. But there are some of those that are really, they don't care. There's religious people that don't care. Having the Batman figure in the movie, I think that's going to widen up the audience a little bit, because now, instead of focusing on, like some of the other movies that like Zeitgeist are focusing on Jesus and they're focusing on that whole story. If you don't care about any of that, it's not going to really pique your interest. When we start talking about Batman and we showcase how this story has done the same exact thing that religions have done over time, I think, hopefully we can get more people interested in making more of a popular notion.
Well, and it really gels for me in a way that I hadn't thought of it before. And when Joseph does the voiceover for the trailer we saw in Washington, if everyone your whole life told you it was true,
right?
Could you tell the difference?
Right.
2,000 years from now, if everyone tells you that Batman was real, who's going to deny it?
And
if you've spent your life being told how cool and how awesome Batman is, and then you have somebody dissing him, oh no, you don't sacrilege Batman.
No.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly. And one of the interesting stories that we had when we were filming Robert Price for the film, he told us the story of a close friend of his that was tortured by his older brother. And his older brother told him that Batman and Superman and these stories were real, like his whole life. He told him these things are actually happened in history. And so this kid grew up and became an adult eventually and figured out that they weren't. But as a kid, he was explaining to him, I thought these things actually happened. And I think in the trailer, that's one of the things we show is if you're told Batman was historic and they did all of these things over time, you don't know any better growing up, you're going to believe that this is a gospel, that the comic books are gospels and not, imaginary.
Yeah, I don't mean to dominate this conversation, but this touches a nerve for me, because when I was in high school, I had a friend who insisted that he was Superman. And he went through the part. I mean, he looked like Superman. He even went to the gym every day to make sure he actually did look like Superman. I mean, it was amazing. The guy had, a number of Superman hero costumes. He had the collection of comic books, all of this. He was really engrossed in the Superman character. But the thing is, you couldn't argue that he was not Superman, because he always had a response to explain everything you might want to bring up as to why he can't seemingly prove or demonstrate his superpowers. There was always an excuse, and it was brilliant apologetics. And I remember thinking how brilliantly this guy could deflect any and every argument. And then I realized that what he's doing is actually apologetics, exactly the same type of argument stance that your religious fundamentalists would use to defend their a priori position. And in fact, this same guy told me many years later, decades later, in fact, that he was embarrassed at having once convinced people that he was Superman, because he was now a fundamentalist Baptist minister teaching creationism in a private Christian school.
Well, that's a perfect transition.
But he's perfectly trained for the job now, isn't he?
Exactly right.
Kind of the opposite of
Look, I talked people into thinking I was Superman in high school. I can handle this guy thing.
I remember convincing people
fantastic.
in the second grade that I was a duck, and that all of my friends were different types of animals, and that they all also lived in the clouds and were watching. And I would even point people out in the playground to go look at the clouds to see my friends who were different animals. You can't see them. Just focus your eyes. Do you need glasses? You can't see these people, really? And so somebody came to play with me after school, saying, can he play? And I remember my grandmother heard that this person says, "Can the duck come out to play?" He's not a duck. He's a little boy. Well, he told me he's a duck, and I could just laugh. You bought that?
I bet you couldn't have kept that cynical approach throughout life, right? You could be one of those preachers. Pull the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah, the only reason that I'm rich is because I have ethics. Excuse me, did I say rich? I'm not rich. I'm clearly not. I'm way broke. The only reason I'm not rich, the only reason I'm not rich is because I have ethics. I was actually asked to be a preacher a quarter of a century ago, because if you just express your confidence, that's all they care about. You know, there are people that care about, you know, academic accuracy, but those are not my audience. You know, if you're talking about religion, there are people that only care about, does he sound confident? Does he exude this?
Can he sell it?
Yeah. And so that's all they're interested in. They just want to be reassured. They just want to be affirmed. And so they want to hear somebody lie to them about things they want to believe and be convincing about it so that they can believe. And so they know, on some level, many of them know that what they believe is not really true, that they're really only pretending. And I've had people tell me many times again, and I know I've said this to all you guys, but I'm going to say it again to the audience. Why can't I believe what I want to believe? These may be what the facts are, but I prefer to believe this, you know, and that I'm hurting people by disproving their beliefs. This is what they want to believe. Let them pretend. And one of my favorite quotes was probably when somebody said, "We have the right to be wrong."
That's different than booking people out of money and stuff. Where do you fall on the Ken Ham? I always ask people, do you think Ken Ham's a true believer, or do you think he's just a charlatan?
Ken Ham is a criminal one way or another. I told Eric Hovind to his face that if there was still a market for snake oil, that he would be in that market. Ken Ham is also. Now, Ken Ham has said many times in many different ways about the type of confirmation bias that he uses. He said, you know, if you want to believe in salvation, which is the second half of the Bible, you have to believe in creation, which is the first half of the Bible, because if you can't believe in the whole Bible, then you can't believe in it. But he knows things that are not true. Like he's seen the evidence for fossils of brain cancer in dinosaurs, for example, and he's seen the many different ways of dating that these dinosaurs are way older than the fables in the Bible. But he dismisses them simply because he's taken the Bible as priority, and he's written into the Answers in Genesis statement of faith that they will automatically and thoughtlessly reject anything that stands against their interpretation of folklore. And so he knows that what he believes is not really true. He just doesn't give a shit.
Well, I agree with that. And I think, you know, he just built this ark, and if you look in the biblical story, there's clearly two different authors, because there clearly is two different stories of how Noah's Ark, the whole, you know, timeline of Noah's Ark happened. I mean, there's different ways that the flood happened, different things that happened after it. It's in the same story. There's obviously two different versions. So,
and it's not just with the Ark, of course. It's also with the Exodus. I mean, read the Exodus, you realize you cannot be reading the story of one author. There is somebody else that came in the middle of this and started putting in other details in order to satisfy some other importance.
Right.
So you have contradictions, not just from the Old Testament to the New Testament, but and one chapter to another, but within a single document, you'll have contradictions that are all attributed to one author. This can't make sense.
Exactly.
He actually is right when he says that if you believe that Jesus came to redeem us from our original sin, and you understand Genesis as a metaphor, then the whole myth arc does fall apart. He's kind of right about that, and I think that everybody who is a Christian, who is a liberal Christian, who is the kind of Christian I grew up with, who accepts evolution and accepts, you know, geological time and accepts all of these scientific facts that we have uncovered, we understand that whether God is real or not, we understand that Genesis is a metaphor, that you can argue that it's not, but we all know that it is, because we know the date of the earth. As Neil deGrasse Tyson says, it's like, that's the easy part. We have that part understood. So the people that understand that, how can they then still think that Jesus came to redeem us from an original sin? Because they know that the Garden of Eden didn't happen. And for me, that's one of those
Now, there's an interesting quandary in why people believe in these sorts of things. When people want to, they want to escape death, they want to be permanent. Now, they have a different philosophy than I do, and I don't know how to describe that. I don't know if this is born of education or if this is something that's just innate in people's personalities, how they get to be this way. But I remember talking to somebody that was an evangelical preacher who insisted that if he doesn't exist, if he doesn't continue to exist forever, and if his life doesn't matter 5 billion years from now, then what happens now doesn't matter either. And he actually said, and I've seen this on video, where he addressed his own congregation at his church, where he said that if he doesn't continue to exist forever, if what we do today doesn't matter 5 billion years from now, then it doesn't matter today either. And so if we don't have eternal life, then there is no reason to end suffering or to or to help people. There's just let people suffer. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. He is absolutely the most nihilist person I've ever heard of, and he's complaining about nihilists. He says that all atheists are nihilists because we understand that what we do today may not matter 5 billion, won't matter 5 billion years from now, and nothing that we know will still exist 5 billion years from now. But what we do matters today. And that people in need today need us today. And if all we do is take care of today, that's great. I can die tomorrow knowing that I did today correctly, and that's all that's important to me. So it's an entirely different philosophy.
Right. And I think that's, for just take our group, just look at our little group in Milwaukee. We started 3 years ago. Again, to Rob's point, the secular community in Milwaukee just is non-existent. We came together, we had a common goal, common vision, and we started just putting our heads together, putting our money together, putting our, blood, sweat, and tears together, and working really hard on these events and these projects, these films, these, documentaries, all the things we're working on, but it's not easy.
I want to give you guys credit for that too, by the way. I mean, while you have this this situation where you're very isolated amongst a whole lot of believers, at the same time, you guys have made Mythicist Milwaukee the center hub of the entire Mythicist movement.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Thanks for saying that.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, when we look at Mythicism, Milwaukee just kind of is stapled onto that first word.
Oh, well, we appreciate that. We really found value in this information early on. We just we felt early on that not enough people knew about this. And, as time goes on and doing the podcast and doing the interviews and doing the films and things, we're just trying to get this information out to those that may be ignorant and to no fault of their own. And we do see the infighting amongst atheists with the Mythicist position. And I think Zeitgeist, the movie, is like one of the things that really added fuel to that fire, unfortunately. And we ought to talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about as much as you want.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed Dia Murdoch, as you know, and she was one of the references for that movie. She complained that after being interviewed for that film, they took some of her suggestions, but then they also added other things that she did not suggest. And I mentioned one or two things that were attributed to her, kind of because she was the reference point for that film, and so anything that they said inaccurate would then be blamed on her.
Right.
Like when the guy said that the sun translates as the sun, as in S-O-N versus S-U-N. Yeah. Of course, she understands that because she understands the difference between different languages. She speaks 5 different languages, right? She knows better. Yeah. But the director of the movie did this, and I said, well, this is one of the things that people criticize you for. She had nothing to do with that. Right. So her name, and I'm sorry that this happened because, of course, she died early this year, right at the end of last year.
On Christmas Day. Yeah.
Christmas Day, yeah, right toward the end, and which is coincidental that it happens to be in this reference, because that's what they were talking about, was the Christmas Day event. But her reputation was so harmed by being named as a reference to this movie, and then this guy throws in this like one embellishment that doesn't make any sense, that didn't actually come from her, but is arbitrarily placed on her. And so somebody else said, and this was a valid criticism, that once upon a time that she held these positions that she no longer held. You know what? This is the great advantage that I have in that we didn't have cell phones when I was a young man. So that as somebody told me recently, somebody my age recently told me, well, I'm so glad they didn't have cell phones back in my day. I wouldn't have any of these hold my beer moments. Yeah, exactly. Because if you could talk to me when I was half my age, if I met me at half my age, I would whoop my own ass. Okay? Because I didn't believe or understand anything as I understand it now. Of course, I thought I did, because all I was about when I was 25 was being an arrogant asshole and pissing people off, and that's what brought me joy. That's not quite the case now. But, you know, so if Dia Murdoch had periods of her development as an academic where she still held on to positions that she later recanted, and when she later admits, you know what, up to this point I've held this position that I realize is incorrect, and she corrects it. We should give her credit for that, but that's not what the atheist community did.
Right.
You know, instead they say that, well, she's never met a conspiracy theory she didn't like. Well, I'm sorry, we can't all be completely rational about everything, right? I mean, and there are some things that I hold right now that I consider that I feel a strong conviction that these things are true. But if you mention them, people will say, well, you're a paranoid conspiracy theorist. No, I've seen constant evidence that implies this to be the case. And if I bring it up within the United States, then people think I'm a paranoid conspiracy theorist. If I bring them up in Europe, people says, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, you know, I had that exact same experience in South America with stuff like that. Things that are like, don't mention that in the United States, that's a conspiracy theory. And then down there, they're like, yeah, of course.
Right. Right, and the thing with Dia Murdoch, and it was really unfortunate, the situation, and we did her tribute show, and you were actually part of that, and we thank you for that, and we'll be forever grateful for her for introducing us to this topic and getting us interested initially. You know, when Peter Joseph made that film, he took a lot of liberties. He took a lot of people's. Yeah, he took a lot of scholarship. Jordan Maxwell's one. That's where the sun thing comes from, and he just patchworked all these various the scholarship and from all these different scholars, but the majority of it was taken from her, and that's why she got such a big black eye for it. And Peter Joseph walked away from that whole aspect of it. If you notice, Zeitgeist moving forward focuses on the financial, the economic, that whole thing. Even though the religion aspect made it popular to where it had hundreds of millions of views, he walked away from it. He ignored it. He essentially let her, defend it herself, which is really unfortunate. But what we want to do with Batman and Jesus is correct that mistake. We want to go down the same path, but we're going to utilize the scholars and have them tell the story.
Yeah, yep. And things like sun and sun is just a coincidence. I mean, that's
English language.
Just in case,
yeah, exactly.
Just in case people don't understand what we're talking about. There was a reference in Zeitgeist where the Son of God was meant to be, as an S-O-N, Son of God, was meant to be the Son of God, implying that God was, or that Jesus was the Son God, S-U-N, which
right.
Of course no academic would ever advocate that, especially at a time and a place where where the English language hadn't even been invented yet.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that I want to touch on in Batman and Jesus as well, is differences in languages and translations can really change how you think about it. And one of the ones I bring up is in Spanish and Greek, the word that we have two words in English, history and story. And most people can notice history has story in it. And in these other languages, it's the same word. It's the same word, historia. So when you translate that, you have to pick one or the other in English. You're picking either story or history, and they kind of do mean the same thing when you boil it down, but there is a different connotation from one to the other. When I say it's history, you think of it as a fact, and when I say it's a story, it could be a fact, but it doesn't have the same
point in our culture. At least for me, when we were growing up, your mom would ask you if you were lying. Are you telling a story?
Right.
That meant, are you lying?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You're telling a fiction.
Right. So it's very misleading. Just a word like that as a small example. I mean, and there's thousands of examples you could find from one language to the next. And a lot of people aren't even aware that, you know, the New Testament is, I believe, entirely from Greek. And, you know, people say it should have been Aramaic or what have you.
Is it
Hebrew, I don't
entirely
know.
from Greek? I mean, it's Greek, and it's also, what wasn't it, the Phoenicians that first wrote it down?
I think I'm pretty sure all the books in the New Testament were Greek,
Yeah.
but I could be wrong.
Yeah, the Greek is. Yeah.
What I propose, and I mentioned this recently when we did the Ark Encounter protest, my personal hypothesis is that there is some truth to the Tower of Babel story, but the Tower of Babel was actually based on the Marduk ziggurat that still exists, or at least the foundations of it still exist. It was originally started by Hammurabi and then was picked up by Nebuchadnezzar around 650 BC. But anyway, when Hammurabi started at around 1750 or thereabouts, the Mesopotamian Empire still existed, and at that time, children were still taking formal classes in how to write cuneiform, which is, of course, your stencil that's pressed into tablets to make letters of a sort, which are then baked into permanent documents, and then these permanent documents were buried in a tomb or a vault that was held by Ashurbanipal, and this is the only reason we know that they exist. So we had a written language and we had a literate people, and then the Mesopotamian empires fell. And at that point, of course, construction on the tower on the Marduk ziggurat, or the tower that Hammurabi was working on, ended, and people lost this literacy. So these stories that they had from their previous empires, from Akkad and Chaldea and Sumer and so forth, were then kept alive by oral traditions, which means that embellishments and enhancements and exaggerations can filter in, so that we have a 1,000-year period like this before the Phoenicians eventually wrote it down again. And when they did, they saw that the stories, or they didn't see actually, but we now see, when we compare what the Phoenicians wrote, what the Bible currently is, and what the Ashurbanipal's library holds, is that these stories have obviously changed over that 1,000-year period. So all of these sort of evolve. So that's the truth that I see for the Tower of Babel story, wherever all these men were supposed to be confused and can no longer communicate with each other. Really what it was a loss of literacy. And I'm not saying that there's any truth to the Tower of Babel beyond that. People used to be able to read, and then they couldn't, and then they start making up shit when they couldn't.
Well, that's a good point. A lot of the popular concepts that we believe in today, heaven, hell, angels, demons, one devil, one God, these are all concepts taken from these older religions, the Phoenicians, the Babylonians, the Zoroastrians. The Persians were a huge influence on the Jews. I mean, just absolutely huge. You talk about the exile, you talk about rebuilding the temple.
Biblical scholars now more or less agree that Zoroastrianism had more of an influence over the burgeoning or the development of Judaism than any other possible contributor. So that they had borrowed a whole lot from the belief in Zarathustra. And this is exactly where the whole vision of angels come from. As a matter of fact, you see depictions of, Persian depictions of people with the four wings that the Bible talks about.
Yep. The guardian angels, as a concept itself, having an angel watch over you, that's Persian, and it's no different than looking at Zorro and then into Superman and in the Batman. I mean, this is what people do.
Similar root, even Zoroastrianism.
Right.
Yeah, we do get a lot of, and I'm sure you guys should talk about this for a moment while we still have time, about the skepticism against the mythicism movement. Because a lot of people, we've all been raised to believe that Jesus was commonly accepted by everybody as a historical character, because people never questioned whether there was a Jesus. But when I was a boy, I remember that it was impossible to even question whether there was a God, because I was told that God was a conclusively proven scientific fact. And when I realized that faith was required, well, then I started investigating other things. And then when I eventually come to realize that not even Jesus is confirmed. And I don't mean on the same level of people saying, well, maybe there wasn't a Christopher Columbus. No, I'm not saying anything like that extreme. I'm saying that there's actually historical verification that we don't have for Jesus, that we have for many. We can better verify the existence of Socrates than we can Jesus, and that Jesus has no more historical validity, literally, than does Santa Claus.
The resistance to the mythicist position baffles me, all right? It baffles me among scholars, among people that
layman's,
the laymen, the
secularists.
people. There's no way that you can convince me that historians classically over the years, whether they were really religious or not, came from a culture of indoctrination just like the rest of us. And unless you are an absolute outsider, a complete atheist, a secularist, or someone from an Asian culture who is going to look into these myths,
right?
Then how can you not be a little bit?
But
I'm waiting. So I can't wait to hear what Bart Ehrman has to say, because I just can't get my head around how these people excuse the absolute lack of evidence.
I have to tell you,
even people who are
I have to tell you,
atheists.
I'm so really anxious about this debate. I really want to be a part of it. I really want to be in the audience. And I've never met Bart Ehrman, but he already has commanded a great deal of my respect, because when I took a class on the history of world religions, the Methodist minister who was he's not just doesn't just have ordination, but he also has a doctorate in religious studies from having personally been to very different shrines and temples all around the world. He based his class on Bart Ehrman and his books, the 16 crucified Christ, or what was
Frank Raglan?
No, it was based on Bart Ehrman's work, and I can't remember what the name of the book was. We were talking about the 16 gospels that weren't approved. You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But, I mean, seriously, so I'm taking a college class that is based on this man's work, and I've never met him, and I've met everybody else that has an opinion on this. So I mean, it would be nice to actually be able to talk to this guy. But he and I, despite his obvious scholarship and my obvious lack thereof, I understand. I still have a disagreement where he says, Jesus clearly believed himself to be God. And I think, how is that possible? Because we have so much proof within the scriptures that the character of Jesus as portrayed in the story clearly did not believe that he was God.
Yep.
And so I have an argument just with that. And of course, Matt Dillahunty holds the opposite opinion that I do. And we've argued about this many times. And we just throw scriptural references at each other.
I would pay to see that. That could be the next debate, actually.
Yeah.
Dillahunty and Arnold, that'd be great.
Well, Dillahunty definitely has the edge on me on some things, but certainly his familiarity with scriptures is way beyond mine. But I do have arguments that I presented in my book that will be out in November that talks about how Jesus never actually said that he was God in the same way that, say, Krishna said that he was God. Mm-hmm. Jesus never implied this at all. In fact, Jesus always only ever identified God as someone else, somewhere else, who could do things Jesus couldn't do and who knew things Jesus didn't know. Why do you call me good? Nobody is good but God. Take this cup away from me, not because I will it, but because you will it. How could he possibly believe that he's talking to himself?
Right. That's a great point. But I think that comes with the politics in the third and fourth century.
And I just stepped on your words, and I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But there was this moment, they always bring this up. Well, they say, well, before Abraham, I am. Well, so he said, I am. So what? This doesn't mean that I am God. That meant I am existing as a created being of God before Abraham. So Jesus made the claim that he was the Son of God and that he existed from the creation of the earth. Okay, fine. I get that part of it. But he also said that, later he's asking himself, supposedly, can my disciples be one with you just as I am one with you? Which proves that Jesus is not one with him and that Jesus knows that he is not one with him. So Bart Ehrman has the position that Jesus understood himself to be the physical incarnation of God, and I have scriptural references proving that Jesus couldn't possibly have held that position.
Right. Well, go ahead, Aaron. Finish your thought.
No, I'm done. I'm done. I'm ranting.
Well, I think what Bart Ehrman, with his argument, is that the guy's been fantastic. Definitely have a lot of respect for his work. He's been really, really this whole process with bringing him to Milwaukee has been great and seamless. But yeah, when it comes to his position, he's in a tough spot because he's saying that he will challenge the Gospels and say how bad the Gospels actually are. but then he has to take a step back and say, well, they're not that bad, and this stuff in here is, we can utilize this, but not that. So he's really, he's in a tough spot, and from us who don't take the Gospels as any historical reliability, we're just like, we're not. That's not our position, but so that's a tough spot he's in. He is an atheist, but when it comes to just that last step of stating whether or not Jesus existed,
And this is one more thing I want to
in a
speak
tough
to, if I may bring this up. Because I have a disagreement with someone does not mean that I discard their scholarship, doesn't mean that I consider myself having any better scholarship than they have, right? I can still respect people who hold very different positions than I do on different subjects. And I have to bring this up quite often. I find that I have seen people who are so into dichotomies that they will dismiss all of the work that anyone has done over a single disagreement on a single point, whether it's political or social or economic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I don't advocate that. I will side with, and I will accept support from Bill Maher, even though he's an anti-vaxxer, and Penn Jillette, even though he's a libertarian, and Jill Stein, even though she believes in homeopathy. You find the commonality that you can work with, and then maybe negotiate with that person over whether you disagree. But you don't slam everything of their entire value over any particular disappointment or disagreement that you have with them, because I'm not going to agree with anybody about everything.
Right. That's well said.
Absolutely.
I wanted to point out too that the way it looks being on the inside of this is that this might be everybody's one and only chance to see Bart Ehrman in a debate. So
you had to throw that in so that I have to
some insider information, man. Some little insider information.
A little insider information. Yeah, it's not one of his favorite things, and
it sounds like
we had to work at getting him to do it.
Trending that way.
So well, it would be kind of like getting Neil deGrasse Tyson to say, "Yeah, okay, I'm an atheist." It's not that big a deal, Neil. We all know already.
Right. Well, and that's the one thing that we hope we do with this movie. We hope we do with the conferences, and we're doing other things to try and change that, because there are a lot of apathetic atheists out there that don't want to call themselves that because of the taboo. Mm-hmm. They don't want to talk about it, and that just helps that religious agenda thrive. And one of the things that our little group here in Milwaukee is doing is trying to, we're working with the secular community. We work with the secular people in the community, Arn Raz, the Dillahunties, all these people, the David Silvermans. But we're trying to step out too, and we're thinking outside the box. We helped facilitate bringing Wu-Tang Clan to the Reason Rally because Killer Priest spoke at one of our conferences. We're talking to famous, comedians, trying to get them on the podcast.
We're working with SNAP, the Survivors Network of those abused by priests.
Right. We're using the Batman figure. We're trying to popularize.
I've never heard of that group, SNAP. This is the first I've heard of them.
Really? They were spotlighted in the movie Spotlight.
Yeah, they were in the movie Spotlight.
It's a national network, the Survivors Network of those abused by priests, and we're lucky enough to have the Midwest chapter guy right here.
Director, yeah.
Peter Isley is his name, and he was a consultant on the film. If you haven't seen that film, Arn,
Spotlight. It's about the Boston Globe
breaking the scandal of the
Catholic
Church.
Well, thank you for pointing me to that. I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, last year nominated for Best Picture, and it's really worth your 2
Michael
hours.
Keaton,
Mark Ruffalo.
Outstanding.
Notebook, I forget
Thank you.
But yeah, so that's one of the things we're trying to do with our median here, is trying to get these people that are atheists, but actually hold some clout, some notoriety, some people that can get others that are not so much into it interested.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
we're working on it.
Well, this sounds like this has been a good conversation thus far, and I know that I had other things that I wanted to add, but I'm going to let you guys go for another 5 minutes or so. Fill us in, bring us up to speed before we close this off.
I did want to slip in a comment on the first debate, which was no shabby affair. It was really a great success. Richard Carrier debated Justin Bass. Are you familiar with Justin Bass at all, Aaron? He's evangelical preacher. He's got a big website, based on the Acts verse that commands evangelism. It's Acts 10:14. I forget. Nice guy. He wasn't a creationist. He was just a.
He's involved with the Bible Beer Consortium.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
that's right.
Is
He's
he?
Bible Beer Consortium
Yeah,
guy,
yeah, he is. You'll probably meet him out there. When you're
Well,
out.
and that debate you can find on the YouTube, right?
You
Yeah,
can find it, and he's a Texas guy too, isn't he? He
Yeah.
came out of Texas, like a lot of you all, and he was a gentleman. He came into the Lions Den and stood up to Richard Carrier, which again I would never want to do.
Right.
Listening to those guys. If you listen to Price and Carrier for 5 minutes, I don't know how you're going to assist that. You know what I mean? You know, what do you have to say after that?
Right.
And people then go back and people are dissing them. So
I've heard of people make a lot of complaints about Richard Carrier, but I've listened to a number of his presentations on both on the historicity of Jesus, but also on the secularism of the founding fathers and so forth, and the specific references that he gives that you can look up as soon as he's done speaking. These were all very compelling presentations, and I saw a great deal of value in those presentations, just in the fact that you can look them up yourself when you get home and go, wow, crap, he was right.
yeah, he knows his stuff.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He wrote a book
He
like
put a
this.
nickel in him.
He could barely pick it
Right.
up. He's a little guy. He could barely pick up his own book. He wrote like a 4,000-page volume on the historicity of Jesus. Or
Yeah.
the non-historicity of Jesus.
Yeah, so
That's what they call it.
check that debate out. It's live on YouTube.
Yeah, we got the debate. Buzz Belief is on the Mythicist Milwaukee YouTube channel, and we also have trailer for Batman and Jesus is on there, and
Holy shit.
Rob and I have a series we're part of called Holy Shit, and we count down.
Make sure that you have all the links necessary, that you give them to me in email so that I can post them on this video,
Right,
so
there's
that
a
people
lot to
can
keep
look
track
down
of
below.
here, so.
It's a lot. I was just picked up by Amazon. Holy shit series.
Yeah, actually, we have the Holy Shit episodes are on Amazon, and they're getting views. Actually, it surprised me. It's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, I like your series quite a lot, so that's well earned.
Yeah, we got to get you on there one of these days. Next time we have
Bring
time
him
and we're in
in.
the same spot.
Well, we're gonna bring Aaron to Milwaukee at some either at a conference or a debate or something. He's coming.
Okay, cool. Or maybe just we'll get this big turnout for the premiere for Batman and Jesus.
Yeah, we will be premiering it at a well-known movie theater in Milwaukee in October. Yeah, we have so much. The podcast every week.
Check out the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.
It's doing really well on iTunes right now.
We're number 14 in the religious category.
The religious other
Or
category.
religious/other.
Yeah.
That's what we are.
In
We're
which
other.
group?
Yeah.
In iTunes?
Yeah,
On iTunes.
on
Yeah.
iTunes. Yeah, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. we
Climbing
put
the
it
charts,
everywhere,
man. We're climbing the charts.
Yeah, we got we're constantly doing events. If it's locally, if it's we're constantly traveling. We'll be in Greece again. We just helped sponsor the first Mythicist conference in Greece with the Greek Mythicist group out there.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
only
a
other Mythicist
statement.
group in the world that we know of. That is a statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're real proud of that.
Yeah, almost for a secular conference, we work with a group in Kenya, the atheists in Kenya. They're doing a fantastic job. They just were featured in the BBC, CNN.
I want to
We will
talk
be
to
working-
the group in Kenya, and actually any African country where you have
Yeah.
an atheist activist movement, because that impresses the hell out of me. Because
They're the only
Oh, I know.
group in 13 million people. They're the only group, and
That's
it's
a
like
lot.
30 of them. And Harrison Mumia, the president, does a fantastic job. We hosted an online event where we had Robert Price, David Fitzgerald, and Richard Carrier involved in a presentation, because when I went to Kenya and I met with Harrison, his first question, I said, I'm asking what they're doing, what their initiatives are, and he said our biggest question right now is whether or not Jesus exists. And I said, well, you came to the right place.
He had a room full of
they
raps
brought
for
you to
audience.
Kenya.
Well, I was in Kenya on my own, and I had looked up the atheist community out there, and I saw Harrison, and we were online. We were
Well, I envy you,
emailing
sir.
back and forth, and
it
was.
I envy you because nobody's hauled my ass to Africa.
No, I had to pay. Trust me, I had to pay. I was there for other business,
Yeah.
but
all he did was whine about the conditions too.
yeah,
Too many insects, too much heat, too many.
Well, I was
animals.
yeah.
That was tire color.
Where are those animals?
I was living with rats, and it was a life-changing experience, that's for sure. But
I have a friend who was in Tanzania, a woman who was in a tent surrounded by hyenas.
Hyenas are rough, man.
Yeah. How do you compare with that? Just nothing
Yeah.
I do is ever compare with that.
Well, and they're talking about having an atheist conference in Kenya, so who knows, Aaron?
We're
You
talking
might be
about
there.
Yeah, they're really into the Batman and Jesus too, and the Greek mythicists are translated into Greek, and so the guys in Kenya and the guys in Greece want to have like a premiere at the same time as we have one in the United States.
That
International
would be
premiere.
outstanding. As I understand, Richard Leakey is back in Kenya, and I'm wanting him to review my book. And I actually took a flight to San Diego because he was supposed to speak at a humanist conference, and I wanted to meet him so much. He and I had shared an email correspondence a decade or so ago, and he couldn't make it for health reasons, and I was very frustrated. I didn't have the money to afford the trip, but I went anyway just to be able to shake his hand. So any excuse that I can, yeah, I would be happy to do that. If anybody is listening,
He runs the humanist orphanage out there, correct? The orphanage that's sponsored by the humanists. Is that
outstanding? Yeah.
Is that Richard Leakey?
I don't know.
Okay, I think that is. Yeah, 'cause I was out there. I saw that orphanage. I was sponsored. That's like the only one. Typically, they're sponsored by churches. There was a humanist organization that sponsors a orphanage in Kenya, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, we're gonna have to close it up. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
Thanks for having us, man. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
Get yourselves. Aaron won't be there because he's a
Maybe.
yeah.
Ah!
Try to get to the Myth Information Conference and the big debate on October 21st.
Check out Batman and Jesus.
Yeah.
MythicistMilwaukee.com. Tickets. Get your tickets
Yes.
now.
All the things. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so
All right.
much, Aaron.
Links below. Good night.
Everybody.